Yeah, so I've actually suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know what that was about, really, to be honest, because I heard that veterans go through it after a war experience. It's only when I experienced it myself I realised how horrific it was. So so it was on the 4th of July 2016, Independence Day. Me and my daughter, we were living on our boat, and on this particular day we were crossing the gangway, and my daughter was holding my hand, and she just finished school. We're walking across the gangway, and so where she was standing, the panels at the bottom cracked and she fell through, and I was holding her, and she was in the air, 40-foot drop into the river, but she was hanging in the air, and there was me trying to lift her up. She's looking at me and saying, "Mum, help me, help me," and I was just all panicky, trying to lift her up, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I gave it a few shots, and then where I was standing, that collapsed, and we both fell through. And it was that moment of falling that kind of became slow motion. As we were falling, we were just looking at each other, just in a telepathic way. We just kind of knew that we were going to die. And as we fell and hit the water, that's when this kind of maternal instincts came about, and I knew we had to survive, get out of there. That was the only way we had to do that. So I grabbed her, and she was only 5 years old then. I grabbed her, put her over my shoulders, and we swam to the nearest point where I could hold on to something, because the tide was taking us out. And as we were holding on, we were shouting out for help, and no one heard us. And I knew that, somehow I had to get out of there, otherwise we were going to be taken away by the tide. So from a far distance, there was this broken ladder, really old, ladder there, and that was the only way out. And it was a bit of a distance, and I said to Manaya, "We've got to swim there." And she's saying to me, "Mum, I can't swim." And I said, "Don't worry, just grab hold of me." I put her over my shoulders, and I just swam for dear life, And so as we got to the ladder, I said to her not to look down, just climb up, and I'm behind you. Don't worry, I'm behind you. So as she's climbing up, I've climbed behind her, and it was a couple of steps where it cracked, and then I fell back into the water and hit my head onto this thick tyre, which kind of made me all a bit dizzy and somehow, again, I see it as the Lord, the Lord saved us that day. He kind of prompted me to get up, and I got onto the ladder again and climbed up. That was horrific. I mean, that just completely done me, we had a near-death experience, me and my 5-year-old. And after that, 3 days after, we went all silent, and we were trying to figure out what was the reason for this. Why did I have to go through this? What's the meaning of life? And it went into more of a deeper, I've always questioned the meaning of life, but this was to another level. I just kind of went into a silent mode, and it was a few months later when I had a transition of moving from the boat to my parents' gaff, and I was in my loft room. The Lord was working on me, but I was going through post-traumatic stress disorder. That's like having flashbacks out of the blue, like what could have been, and they were really horrific. It felt so real as well. I could be making dinner, and then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I just had a flashback, and it's uncontrollable. It really, and it just makes you feel like, you know, you're back in that scene again. But this time it's so horrific. Like, either I could have died or she could have died, and, you know, and that went on for a while. It really did. And I was then, I went to my doctors and they referred me to a counsellor, and I was so fortunate that he was a Christian counsellor who gave me support that I wouldn't have probably got from a normal counsellor, because I was going through a transition coming to the Lord. I didn't know what was happening, but obviously he did. He knew what he was doing with me. It's just really weird because I have suffered from depression before. I was at the age of 20. I was sectioned in a mental institution because I had eating disorders. So I was 4.5 stones in weight. And so, most of my organs were about to collapse. I had irregular heartbeat, and I was in in that kind of slow suicidal mode, not knowing what I was doing to myself, to be honest. I wasn't happy with my life back then. So where I was sectioned for 9 months in a place called Warley Hospital in Brentwood, it's closed down. This was a lunatic asylum. You know, they were kind of like really weird. It was like experimenting with patients on, giving them electric shocks on their head. They're coming out even more like zombies, and just giving them pharmaceuticals, making them all numb and what have you. And I just didn't know why I was there. I'm not supposed to be here. Why am I here? I have been through bouts of depression in my life. What I can say now is that, I have none of that. The Lord has taken me completely out of my old self and made me brand new again, and I appreciate this life now because I live for the Lord, where, my life, if I look back now, has always been an up and down roller coaster, temporary moments of happiness, happiness is when things happen to you temporarily, it brings a bit of happiness. I have joy now. Joy from Jesus. The joy comes from a deep inner feeling. I'm not saying that I'm always hunky-dory, life can be quite unpredictable, and there are moments where I don't feel great, but I still have joy. And the moment I think about the Lord and Jesus, I just feel like, wow, that cannot be taken away. There's a difference between happiness and joy, and I think a lot of people try and you ask them, what would you want in life? Oh, I want to be happy. Happy, that's what everyone wants, but it ain't gonna last long, trust me, because you are just gonna try and fulfill your life with, moments of things happening to you, and it's never satisfying, it's only temporary. If you want something permanent, focus on the Lord. He will give you something that is just no one can take away, I just, I look back in my life and think, wow, 40 odd years, I'm 47 now, so 40 odd years, I've just been through hell and back, and now I'm experiencing heaven here on earth because I'm with the Lord, so yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Psalms chapter 34, verses 17 to 18.
The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come unto me, all ye that labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy Lord. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Psalms chapter 9, verse 9. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Know this. Stop relying on yourself or this world. They can't help you. You can't help yourself. The only way is to rely on the Lord. Give your life to Jesus. He's the only way. Seriously. He's the only way to the truth and life.